This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this StockBox interview.
Joining us today for a bit of a special feature is Malcolm Palle, the Executive Chairman of Coinsilium, and James Van Straten, the Senior Bitcoin Analyst at CoinDesk and advisor to Coinsilium, for a bit of a special feature on their Forza element, their crypto treasury side of the business. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining me. Malcolm, first of all, just start us off by setting the scene as to why you've done this crypto treasury under the name Forza.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having us on, Mark. So we've been watching what's been going on, particularly on this, the evolving and this nascent space with companies, public companies, putting crypto, particularly Bitcoin, on their books and actually, representing themselves in terms of their business as Bitcoin treasury companies, which is a term that evolved probably in the last 3 to 6 months because it's become a thing. Last account, and James probably will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, is about 80 public companies globally with Bitcoin on in their treasury, and that's a growing number. And we're seeing some very significant valuations for companies that actually can demonstrate that they've got Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and it's in line with the future of this future trend that's moving very fast. So Coinsilium actually has had Bitcoin since it started. So there's no difference there. The only problem or challenge we've had in the past is actually how we report it, because the UK is a bit unique in terms of actually how the regulator, the FCA, views entities that actually offer retail investors crypto assets or reference crypto prices. So we've always had to run this gauntlet and sort of be very careful that we position ourselves correctly as what we do, which is we're a venture business and an investor that happens to have Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in its treasury, and at different stage in the cycles that can be significant amounts of money. However, and we've recycled that into other investments, and we've used it sort of advantageously. So Forza is the new name for an existing subsidiary we had in Gibraltar, and what we decided to do was actually create an in-house version of these Bitcoin treasury companies, which we could do very easily and readily. We needed to get the house in order, so we appointed Hassan's international law firm in Gibraltar, who are regulatory specialists, because we wanted to make sure that the entity we set up was going to be in line with current regulation in Gibraltar. And we also wanted to make sure in the UK that everyone's clear that, Coinsilium as a company is still doing what it's always done. However, it now has another element, which is sort of separating off from the main business, but still owned by the company, which will be a repository for its crypto and particularly its Bitcoin. But with the emphasis now, with James joining us as an advisor, and we've also appointed another advisor called Clement Hackett, who is the founder of Automato, which is a DeFi automation protocol. Brought them both in with the view of actually creating what we would refer to as a Bitcoin 2.0 model treasury company, which not only is focused on holding Coinsilium's crypto or Bitcoin, and it's actually will be holding Bitcoin in its own right as it evolves. And this is something I will be able to talk about going forward. But if you imagine that, there's companies coming to market that are representing themselves as Bitcoin treasury companies, we have an embryonic state of a company with all the boxes ticked, which we will be looking to kind of bring to the fore. And how we do that is something I hope we'll be able to talk about in the near term. But at the moment, all the elements are in place. We're just talking about it for what it does. So that's really the rationale. It's two things. Firstly, to separate off the the crypto, and particularly the Bitcoin that Coinsilium has, into the vehicle that will nurture its growth, because we want to actually use DeFi strategies to actually generate yields, which will in turn buy more Bitcoin. And there will be other elements we'll put in place which will demonstrate how the actual treasury of a Bitcoin that Forza will hold will actually grow and become meaningful. And we'll also have another element to that, which is effectively awareness and education, which is being put in place. So there's lots of moving parts, lots of things going on, but particularly with appointing James as the advisor. His expertise is extremely deep. He's been following all these Bitcoin treasury companies, how they evolve, the different mechanisms they use to actually fund themselves. And it's actually, going to sort of accretive methods, which kind of win-win, because you actually end up holding Bitcoin, which is you have to have that conviction that Bitcoin is going to be a legitimate treasury asset and grow significantly from where it is now. So James has joined us. We're delighted to actually say he came to Gibraltar last week when we launched Forza officially. There should be a video of that presentation released shortly. It's being edited, and James gave a presentation of his of what he does for a day job, basically, which is an analyst in the space. I hope that answers the question. I appreciate it was a little longer than you wanted, but if there's anything else, then please otherwise we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, just one last thing before I bring James in here, just to summarise here. So it effectively means that Coinsilium can become a Bitcoin treasury company as well as continuing with the venture building and everything that you do, right? Which makes sense because you've got such a pool of crypto anyway, haven't you?
Well, yes, we have, and we have got also we earn revenues from advisory work in crypto, which we can recycle into Bitcoin. We also have vesting tokens from the investments we've made, which we can then recycle through Forza. I would point out at this stage, it won't be Coinsilium at this point that is going to be seen as the Bitcoin treasury company, but we are kind of working to take advantage of this opportunity, which is a massive trend. And if it transpires through the efforts that we're making in the near term, that the Forza takes on a life of its own, then it could well be a dominant factor in the valuation of our company.
Sure. And does it mean, just finally, Malcolm, that you can report a bit more frequently on the treasury?
Well, we're restricted. Coinsilium is governed and restricted by financial reporting, which it does in accordance to the market. There are opportunities sometimes for us to report significant movements in our cryptocurrency treasury. However, Forza will, by virtue of its actual structure and setup and agenda, be reporting to Coinsilium as its owner, its performance. And then as a division of Coinsilium, I'm sorry to be a bit pedantic and about it, but I'm just talking you through the process. As a division of Coinsilium, Coinsilium can report that Forza's reported its performance, and that is what we're aiming to do, which will give transparency to the market about how Forza's doing. And once all the elements are in place, it will become much more clear how that's going to work.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Malcolm. Well, James, let me come to you and just get a bit of a sense of what's going on in this space with crypto and Bitcoin treasury companies. I mean, are we seeing quite a lot of them? The big one that most people will know would be MicroStrategy, for example, but are we seeing a bit of a trend moving at the moment?
Yeah, we're seeing a slight trend uplift, not a heavy amount, about 4 or 5 years into the process now, and I would have thought we would have seen a lot more from a few more jurisdictions, which shows how early we are still in the space. Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, they started in August 2020, and their share price is up about 2,500%. There are many reasons why. It's outperformed every single stock in the S&P 500. But Michael Saylor, or the genius that Michael Saylor found, was there was so much untapped capital that couldn't actually acquire any Bitcoin or Bitcoin per se. So he's found novel ways to find buyers to find a home for any of this Bitcoin appreciation, be it convertible debt, preferred stock. Even in the UK, we can't access any Bitcoin ETFs. So our only play other than spot Bitcoin is through MicroStrategy. And Strategy is one of the most purchased stocks on UK brokerage accounts, one of the most traded stocks. And that's one of the reasons why this stock trades at a premium to its net asset value. And when this stock trades at a premium to its net asset value, he does something called an ATM, share sales into the market, where he can sell shares into the market, essentially diluting shareholders. And in turn, he's raising cash in order to buy more Bitcoin. So that theory is called accretive dilution. He's diluting his shareholders in order to attain more Bitcoin. So he's just passed 500,000 Bitcoin. That's about 12 times more than the second closest publicly traded company. I think that's Marathon, that holds about 40 to 45,000. And what he's doing, he just continues to plug into all these new capital markets that can't get any access. So we've now just seen another preferred stock offering, which his first one, Strike, was an 8% dividend, and that had a conversion price if the common stock hit $1,000, so it was a 10 to 1 conversion ratio. And with Strife now, this new preferred stock offering, it's just 10% dividend. So he's trying to find the appetite for the investor, what they want. The next wave of adoption, in my opinion, is through income or a stable income, and that's what he's offering to the market now. Okay. So he's raised around 710 million through this new offering. So that's going to be deployed again this week after buying another 6,000 Bitcoin on Monday. So you can tell that there is a huge appetite for Bitcoin for capital markets that just can't get access to spot Bitcoin. His convertible notes are one of the most successful convertible notes on the market. Again, bonds don't typically generate yield, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% maybe. His are on a blended basis around 70% higher. So he's put the playbook in, but what we've realized is you can't just replicate his playbook, because if a company goes onto a market and just says, we're going to buy Bitcoin and hold it, I don't see the need for a company to do that, because MicroStrategy have already laid the playbook. They've done a 4-year cycle. They survived the winter. So you're going to go for the tried and tested. You do have to do something different. MetaPlanet in Japan are also a first mover. They do a slightly different model. And they were the best performing stock in 2024, I think, out of any publicly traded equity on the market globally. So every market has different risk profiles from investors. Every market has a different capital market structure, and it's just finding where your company sits in that market.
Okay. And I mean, what difference? Sorry, Malcolm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the differentiator for us is that we're also incorporating an element of DeFi yield generation from the. So we're actually making the funds in the treasury sweat. So we're actually, we're not just sort of getting the Bitcoin, putting it in a pot, and then just watching it go up, down, and then gradually increase, which is great when you've got the scale, as James said, of Strategy and Michael Saylor's entity. But we need to make our crypto work, so we can actually feed it in. We can then use Automato's yield generation strategies and other strategies as well. So it actually seeds itself. I mean, you still need to get the Bitcoin in there to actually give it some substance, but we want to sort of wash that through, get that yield, and then with the yield that we generate, buy more Bitcoin. So it's that's why we refer to it as a 2.0 treasury model.
Sure. Okay. You answered my question effectively. What is your strategy to kind of differentiate you? I mean, I don't know if you have this to hand, Malcolm, but would you have objectives or KPIs you'd want the Forza Treasury to sort of meet over 12 months, 24 months?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
I mean, but you're asking me at this stage to actually give you stuff which we haven't told the market. So,
sure. Yeah.
and that's something that we also need to kind of ensure that we're ready to do that. So there'll be a few news releases that will give indications of that happening. But I would say from where we stand at the moment, considering the opportunity in front of us and the people that we're now starting to talk to, it's quite extraordinary. I don't think since we've had Coinsilium, we've been running Coinsilium, we get excited about projects that we believe have got potential, but I don't think we've ever seen anything that's got so much attention globally. And also we're talking to some people that are sort of really global players in the space. So we're very excited because we're a tiny entity, in the overall scheme of things.
So, James, what are you seeing at the moment then? If you're obviously an advisor here to Coinsilium, so I don't know if I can ask you what you're advising on, what you're sort of telling Malcolm and the team at the moment, but what are you seeing trend, what rise, investor appetite you mentioned for cryptos and BTC. So have you got any key takeaways, key bits of highlights that are going on in the sector at the moment that you can pass on to us?
Yeah, well, it's just what Malcolm alluded to before. There's what we can say to the markets and we can't, but our overriding goal, and I think Malcolm would agree, is to increase our Bitcoin holdings in a risk-adjusted manner. I think that's the most important thing. You can obviously go and leverage yourself as much as possible, but being able to withstand the volatility, the drawdowns is so paramount. So I've been in Bitcoin now for 7 years, and the amount of entities that have accumulated vast amounts of Bitcoin and not be able to be here today shows that this isn't a short-term game. You need to be able to acquire in the peaks and the troughs. So one of Strategy's issues was they seem to be buying the top, which wasn't an issue for him because he's kind of made a strategy where he can allow for buying tops because he has a long-term view and his debt is a 4-year maturity. So he has that leeway. But in order for smaller entities to buy at a much more concise price, that's something that we would have to be way more efficient on, and being able to withstand volatility and drawdowns as well. So you're not in a position that you're going to be a forced seller. So it's all these kind of capital structures that you need to understand.
Yeah.
Okay. And there will be a bit of an element of trading going on as well. Is that right, with the integration of Automato?
Well, Automato doesn't call itself a trader. They use sort of more sophisticated terms like they generate yield, and there's various methodologies that their technology does. But essentially, for the layman, it optimizes strategies, which does involve buying and selling. So call it what you will. There will be an element of an amount in the treasury that will be kind of deployed to actually kind of invest in Automato strategies, which will be automated. It takes the emotion out of it, you see. That's the wonderful thing. But as James alluded to, we want the biggest risk of any of this is actually kind of leverage, is overreaching, is finding yourself, as James said, with, a lot of companies have done this, been in a position with a significant amount of Bitcoin, then gone out and borrowed against it and found themselves getting wiped out. We're not going to put ourselves in that position. That's not to say we won't use some creative methodologies, and they could be various instruments. Don't forget, equity is not the only instrument you can use to actually get funds. But I don't really want to go too far into that side of things, because until we've actually got things bedded down, what I am doing, I think, the takeaway for our shareholders and investors is that in the usual scheme of things, normal scheme of things, such an early stage, we wouldn't be talking about this. We'd be working on it, because once you start talking about it, you build up expectations and hope. The difference is that because of what's happening in the market, it would be strange if we weren't talking about what we're doing. So we are kind of putting things together and we are talking about this at a very early stage. And it does come with a kind of the issue that there's certain things we can't say, although we'd like to, but because there's still a possibility of A, B, C, D, or E, and we don't know which of those is going to be the way this will come off. But what I would say is, I don't know if you saw Eddie and I exercise some of our warrants. We've put in some more money last month. We are looking to kind of really pursue this at an accelerated pace. And again, the takeaway being that Forza, we need that the word to go out and people to understand that we are in the game at this stage, even though it doesn't. We're sort of struggling to put the elements in place when we talk about it, but it won't be long before we can start making hopefully some very significant announcements on that side, which I think will be value accretive for the company and its shareholders.
Excellent. Good. So in a nutshell, Malcolm, effectively Forza is there to build the crypto treasury, to hold the crypto treasury, almost a strategic reserve. You look to do a bit of trading on that with the Automato there. You can report a bit more frequently on what you've got in treasury.
Sorry to interrupt you. The whole basis of this is transparency. And so if Forza can't report its performance, then it's not doing its job.
Yeah.
So it will be within its own confines reporting, and we won't, we will be kind of motivated to ensure that its performance is reported.
Yeah. Okay.
Regularly.
And as a bigger picture, what would be the overall ambition? To build a treasury, to return some to shareholders, to use some of the returns to reinvest in projects internally, or all of the above?
I'll ask you a question. You've just had a baby? You just had a kid?
About a year ago, yeah.
Okay, a year ago. What's he going to do? What's your boy? Is he your boy?
Yeah.
What's he going to do for his profession? What do you think he's going to be?
No, no idea. But I have my vision.
Okay, but you hope he's going to grow up into a nice, big, strong boy, and you're going to do all you can to nurture him in that direction.
Exactly.
And if he becomes a Bitcoin billionaire in the process, you won't complain either, will you?
No. Okay.
Okay, because that will help with your retirement. I'm being very facetious. I do apologise, but the point being that if we create value as we intend to from this, we consider Bitcoin as a once in a generation, possibly multi-generation opportunity. If Bitcoin does what we expect it to do, we want to be at the table, we want to be at the feast, and we want to be able to leverage the 10 years that we've actually experience we've had and all the connections we have at the highest level to make sure that we offering what we do, which is a listed entity which people can buy shares out in. We're also cross-trading on the OTCQB market. So we've got access to, investors, retail investors in the US have got access to a company which will be positioning itself in this space. So we've got that market as well. We've got, needless to say, Eddie is kind of a well-known figure in the space. We've got all the technology to actually make this work. So, it's a very exciting time. And if we build it up as we expect to, then I don't want to sort of over-egg it, but it's very difficult not to. But you can imagine if this grows significantly, then the value of Coinsilium will grow significantly, and then that's a great problem to have, is how you handle that, because it is really, the targets we're seeing. I think maybe put James on the spot, ask him what he thinks his target is for Bitcoin, or I know he's not going to give you an exact number, but just to what you think is the short, medium, and long term potential for that.
I did want to give James the last word, if you can, generally, James, on what you're seeing in the space, appetite for cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and if you want to put a target price on it, we won't complain.
What's coming out of the US, the largest capital markets in the world, with a Bitcoin strategic reserve, the Donald Trump and his administration have siloed Bitcoin differently to crypto. So that was a huge win for Bitcoin and the reserve. So they're going to start purchasing in a delta neutral way, meaning no taxpayer will incur any costs. So once that starts rolling, I think the market will start to wake up. I thought that was one of the most bullish news I've ever heard in my entire life, and we sold off 30%. It was very similar to price action to what we saw last January with the ETFs, which sold off 20% on the news. Okay. These ETFs were the most successful ETF launch of all time. And if you look at what happened with gold in GLD back in 2004, there were 7 years of continuous huge inflows, and gold was in a 7-year bull market. So yeah, I expect the exact same thing. And when you're in a world full of geopolitical uncertainty, fiat debasement, and yields globally at multi-decade highs, just loads of capital is just going to swarm in. So yeah, extremely bullish.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much for your time, James Van Straten and Malcolm Palle from Coinsilium.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.